Welcome back, or if you're new here, welcome to Dark Secrets. Today guys, I'm super excited to share this week's stories with you. Today we got 3 short Dogman encounters that were thrilling. And the last one actually shocked me, because there's a twist in it I had yet to see. Let's get into these stories. Encounter 1, the Dogman's Kill. It was 1997 up in Colorado mountains. My friend, we'll call him Earl, and I was up there to go elk hunting. What we saw on this trip ensured I'd never step foot in the woods again. I'll skip the hike and all that. Just know we were in damn good shape and hiked off the road for almost 3 hours to get to our spot. We set up camp and had a pretty uneventful first night. The next morning, we discussed where we would each set up and watch for elk, and headed out our separate ways. About 20 minutes into my walk, I noticed a carcass. I went to investigate and it was fresh, real fresh. It was a white-tailed deer. The problem, however, was I never saw an animal mutilated like this. It had 3 deep gashes, evenly spread out, as if claws ripped through this thing's back. But even more oddly, the neck was contorted and had been broken. The intestines were sprawled out on the ground. And when I bent down to take a closer look, it appeared the heart, lungs, liver, and other organs were eaten. I have no idea what could have done this, and it spooked me. When Earl and I met up back at camp later that day, I told him about the deer. He was just as bewildered as I was. That night, we were sitting by the fire discussing what maybe it could have been. Mountain lion, I asked. But I've never seen a mountain lion leave claw marks like that. And the broken neck was completely unexplainable. Plus the fact only certain organs were ate, we were stumped. At the butt crack of dawn, I took Earl over to look at the deer. As we got near it, we saw something black hunched over it. Our first instinct was black bear. Then it just stopped what it was doing. It froze, and then it let out a deep growl as it slowly stood up. It was now on 2 legs, covered in hair. Its arms were long with large claws. It slowly turned while still growling. It must have been 7 feet tall. When its gaze met mine, I was stunned. It had a head like a wolf with menacing eyes. I snapped out of my shock to the sound of a gunshot. Earl pulled up his rifle and shot this thing. It let out a howl in pain, and started sprinting towards us impossibly fast. We both raised our rifles and fired. The beast stumbled and let out another howl in pain and then changed directions and disappeared into the woods. Now, need I remind you, we were both elk hunting. We had 338 rifles. This thing just ate 3 rounds. Earl and I didn't say a word. We both knew what the other was thinking. Let's get the hell out of here. We went straight back to camp, got the necessities, and hiked out. I never returned to the woods. It took Earl a couple of years, and he started hunting again, but he never went back to that area. Encounter 2, the Dogman in the Farmhouse. My story is pretty short, but it made me a believer, and I feel like it needs to be heard. My wife and I have a country home on about 20 acres out in eastern Iowa. We used it as a getaway home during the summer when we can. The previous year, we had one bad thing after the next happen to us, and we was never able to make it out. So the house has now sat 2 years without being cleaned. 2 weeks before we planned to be there for a month, my wife decided she was going to drive up Friday night, clean all day Saturday, then drive home Sunday. She wanted our month up there to be as relaxing as possible and didn't want to have to worry about cleaning. It was about an 8-hour drive. My wife arrived at the home around midnight on Friday. I felt a sense of relief when I heard my phone ring because I knew she made it okay. But when I answered the phone, my wife was hysterical and in tears. "What's wrong?" I asked. All she could say was an animal got in the house and wrecked it, and she could hear something in the basement. I told her to get in the bedroom and lock the door, get the shotgun from the closet. I'm on my way. By the time I got to the house, it was 8:30 a.m. and the sun was out. It was a terrible 8-hour drive because we didn't have cell phones yet in the late 80s. My wife ran out to me as I pulled in the drive, shotgun still in hand. I gave her a hug, so happy she was okay. She handed me the shotgun and said, "It's still in the basement, and it sounds big." I charged inside, and she was right. The house was a mess. Furniture flipped, curtains down, and 3 huge claw marks in the trim around the door that leads to the basement. I cracked the basement door open. Before I could even adjust my eyes, something smashed into the door, knocking me to the ground, and my shotgun went flying. I heard my wife let out a scream as I reoriented myself. I saw a creature covered in black fur running on 2 legs through the kitchen as it smashed straight through the door and ran across the pasture at a mind-blowing speed. As I stood up, I noticed that my wife was in shock, just gasping for air, staring wide-eyed out the door. I wrapped her up in my arms and asked her if she was okay. Her response made my blood run cold. She said, "It looked at me. It had a dog or wolf head with glowing yellow eyes. All I felt was fear and dread." We left the home that day and shortly thereafter sold our little peace of mind getaway. And we sold it dirt cheap, I add. I did put in the description of the ad that there was a large wild animal breaking in. I wasn't going to completely screw someone over. The buyer called me shortly after purchase and asked for a description of the animal. Reluctantly, I told him exactly what I saw, and his response shocked me. "Oh, that don't surprise me. Dogmen have been known to occupy abandoned shelters, or in this case, the house, around these parts." I asked the man, "Is that what that thing was? A dogman?" The gentleman replied, "Yep, I've never seen one myself, but my grandfather always told us stories about them being around here when we were kids." Hey guys, real quick, before we get into this last story with the crazy twist, if you're enjoying how we tell cryptid encounters in an immersive format, please drop a like, hit that subscribe button, and leave a comment. I'd love to talk with you guys. These short actions help a small channel like Dark Secrets so much, so in advance, thank you for your support. Now let's get into this story. Encounter 3, the Dogman Protector. My boyfriend Mark was obsessed with everything cryptid. One evening he asked me if I wanted to go camping with him. He was going cryptid hunting again. He did this all the time, going out, trying to see a Dogman, Bigfoot, Wendigo, any cryptid. He believed in them all. I said yes, even though I didn't believe a single bit of his nonsense. I'd never been camping, and it sounded peaceful. That night we were sitting by the fire, and I had to pee. I went into the tree line, and just as I started to go, I heard a grunt or a growl right behind me, but between me and camp. I bolted up, pants still down, stumbling further into the trees, trying to pull my pants up and put distance between me and this thing. I heard branches break really close to me. I yelled out, "Mark, this isn't funny," and then my heart sank. I heard Mark call out. He was a long ways away. "What did you say?" I realized whatever this was, it wasn't Mark. Then more branches snapping. I ran again. My only direction choice was deeper into the woods. Then, right in front of me emerged a huge creature. I'm guessing 8 feet tall. It was standing on 2 legs and looked like a cross between a man and a gorilla. From what Mark always talked about, I'd say this was a Sasquatch. Then I heard something behind me, and as I turned, I saw it was another one. It was the one that corralled me away from camp. The realization hit that I was just lured and successfully trapped. I screamed at the top of my lungs for Mark. All I got in return was his voice, so faint and far, I couldn't even understand what he said. Then the 2 creatures started closing the gap, moving towards me together. My chest was tight. Panic has overtaken my entire body. Then a low, terrible growl came from my right. Before I could even see anything, something dashed right in front of me. It stood up in front of me, also on 2 legs. This one was different. It was a little shorter, with a wolf-like head, very muscular, and huge claws at the end of this thing's arms. I thought to myself, is this a Dogman? Again, just going off all of Mark's ramblings. The 2 creatures took a couple steps back. then began to do circles as if looking for an opening. The Dogman stayed within a foot or two of me, circling around me with his back to me, facing the two Sasquatch. One of the Sasquatch broke a large branch, then in return, the Dogman put his arms straight out, spread out his claws, and let out a vicious growl. This charade went on for what felt like 5 to 10 minutes. Who knows how long it actually was. Then the Sasquatch slowly retreated. That's when the Dogman turned and looked at me. Deep, burning yellow eyes pierced into my soul. I was numb, but I mustered a weak thank you. He let out a short, unthreatening grunt and nodded his head in the direction of camp. I immediately started heading that way, and I could feel him following me. It made me uneasy and comfortable at the same time. Once I reached camp, I looked back and saw nothing. Mark ran up to me and asked if I was okay. He said he went into the woods looking for me, but came back before he lost sight of the fire. I'm now bawling my eyes out and collapsed onto the ground. After a few minutes and Mark asking me nonstop what was wrong, I told him what had happened. Mark's eyes went cold. He stood up and started packing camp and said, "Come on, we're leaving." I thought he was doing it for our safety, so I helped him pack and we left. On the car ride home, he was dead quiet, and I could tell he was pissed. I finally asked him, "What's wrong?" He looked at me with hate in his eyes and said, "The one thing I'm passionate about, and you want to mock me." I was in shock. "Mock you?" I replied. "Yes, that whole charade you pulled back there was just a slap in my face. Ah ha ha, you're a child for believing in cryptids. There is no way you saw a cryptid, let alone 3. I've been coming out here for years. We're done." I was disgusted. I didn't know what to say. When we got back to town, he dropped me off and cut all ties with me. Hey guys, attached you'll see our previous video. It's got a Dogman, a Wendigo, and a Bigfoot in it. I'd love to see you over there. And that's going to do it for today. As always, keep an open mind, and I'll see you in the next one.